Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. Today on the show, we got Mark Schindler in the building. We're going to be running through some NBA news and notes that have occurred over the course of the last week and a half, something like that. We've got the in-season tournament, which I think has been a great success. We've got some NBA ownership stake sales that I kind of want to talk through a little bit about at the top. We've got LaMelo Ball, who's going to miss significant time, seemingly, with an ankle injury. We've got the Warriors struggling right now. We've got the Kings playing well right now. We've got the Pistons being in a place where I think they need to make some real changes here moving forward, and I want to talk about that. Just a number of different things. We're going to go in 45 different directions on this show, like I feel like we always do. Mark, what's going on, buddy?
I'm ready to go in 45 different directions, man, because that's what I've been doing the last couple of weeks. So I can, we're on the same page already, headed in.
That's dead on. I'm excited. I've got my hat straight forward. I'm ready to go in solidarity with Colin Cowherd. You got to be professional if you're going to be the CEO. If you're going to be the quarterback of this podcast, you have to wear the hat straight forward. No backwards hats here. We're ready to go. That is by far my favorite Colin Cowherd bit, that you can't be a franchise quarterback and wear a backwards hat. It feels so unnecessary, and yet I find it hilarious every time he talks about it, because I think that he used to be serious about it, but now it's like metastasized into a bit that we can laugh at. Tom Brady's worn backwards hats. Everybody wears backwards hats from time to time. It's so silly, but I enjoy the bit and I'm here for it.
Yeah. Speaking of Tom Brady, I still can't believe him shitting on the league that he was just part of like Great. 5 months ago. But, that's a whole other story. If you haven't, I watch Cam and Mace every day, because how can you not? And their take on it was hilarious. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
It's great. I have not dove into the Cam and Mace experience.
It's
yet.
fantastic. It's legitimately, I saw a clip on Twitter probably like a month and a half ago, and I just got hooked right from there. I was like, oh, this is what it's like all the time that I need to watch. And it has been very good. They do really good jobs with interview stuff. I like their host a lot. She's good at keeping them on track with things and adding in things. It's worth it, man.
Okay, we're going to have to take a look at the Cam and Mace experience. All right. Shout out Cameron. Shout out Mace. Might have to do it. Casey Peanut says his Carson Wentz's career proved Colin Cowherd right. Honestly, yes. Fair point.
Very right.
Yeah, I'm all about it. Okay, so real quick at the top, I want to talk a little bit about the sales of the Mavericks, and, kind of under the radar, it seemed like Mark just alerted me to the fact that the Pacers seem to be selling 20% of their team to Stephen Rales, who is like a producer for Wes Anderson movies. So
Asteroid City in Indy. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out my beloved Wes Anderson. If you can look at the thing behind me, if you're watching on YouTube, by the way, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, come join us every time that we do this show. It's a really good time. Over on the YouTube channel as well, I've got a Jalen Suggs video breakdown for an hour. I've got a Cam Thomas video breakdown for like an hour, talking about those guys and what they bring to the table, what makes them special, some of the concerns that they have, doing just a deep scouting dive. Go to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button. Game Theory Podcast with Sam Vicini. If you can look behind me, I have got a number of Wes Anderson movies back there, because Wes Anderson releases on Criterion as a general idea, and Criterion Blu-rays are by far the best in the DVD space. So I just continue to buy Wes Anderson movies. I watched Grand Budapest like a couple weeks ago. It's fantastic.
Good movie.
Shout out Stephen Rales. But he is apparently buying 15% more of the Indiana Pacers at a $3.47 billion valuation, according to Sportico. Mark Cuban has sold, it looks like something like 57%. The number is unclear, but an SEC filing has the Adelson family in Las Vegas, which controls Las Vegas Sands Corp, which is an enormous gambling conglomerate there. They have sold just about $2 billion in stock, which is being used to fund the majority interest in a professional sports franchise pursuant to a binding purchase agreement subject to customary league approvals. that would be like right around 57% of a $3.5 billion evaluation if they use the full $2 billion, which means Mark Cuban is now a minority owner in the Dallas Mavericks. Although it seems like, based off of what has been reported by Shams, Mark is going to keep team control and keep like basketball operations control and everything like that. And the Adelsons will be like a silent ish kind of partner. I'm always hesitant on situations like that. I think it's very difficult to make the money work when the money people want something and then maybe Mark Cuban / the minority owners want something else. It seems questionable on some level to me. But did anything here strike you as interesting? Because I want to talk a little bit after you kind of give your spiel on like what I think might be happening here.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that stuck out right away too is he's leaving Shark Tank. So I do think it is interesting that those things are happening concurrently. That just like, I don't know, like I know for me, anytime that I make multiple life changes at the same time, like that, I'm not trying to like insinuate that there's something deeper going on, but like that does definitely like raise your eyebrow a little bit. Um, I think my bigger thing is just like I am fascinated to see how this works out because just like you said, I think even taking it a step further, um, having an ownership group on track with like a president of basketball ops and GM is already difficult enough. Um, Having a part owner who was the full-time owner for like 2 decades, who now is taking on a smaller role monetarily, but is doing the same stuff basketball wise. I'm fascinated to see how that plays out because that just seems like a recipe for something to happen. Because power dynamics are power dynamics. So I'm I'm just curious to see how that goes because that is it is very rare that people coming in with money decide that they want to be completely hands off. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely right. It feels like the money piece of it is interesting to me. The other piece of it that I find interesting is that I think people are kind of jumping in a lot of different directions with the Cuban thing. Like I've seen people speculate, like, is he running for president, given the fact that he's going off of Shark Tank? But like the Shark Tank thing, it seems like is happening at the end of this season of Shark Tank. And he's still invested in the Mavericks, so I don't know if, and he's still handling like the day-to-day stuff with the Mavericks, so I don't know if that totally lines up. I've seen people speculating that he still wants an interest in an NBA team, but Mark Cuban, I think Amin Al Hassan brought this up particularly. Mark Cuban made his money with broadcast.com and sold it like literally the perfect time before the .com bubble burst, and therefore like wondering if some ownership groups are seeing some potential for maybe the TV deal returns to not be quite as impactful as what they thought they would be on the bottom line. I think that's like somewhat plausible. I would buy that to an extent, depending on things that I don't necessarily know in terms of like how involved Amazon, Netflix, Apple, places like that would get involved in the bidding if the league doesn't feel that strongly in terms of those streamers getting involved in the bidding. I can see something like that. The thing that stands out to me though is like Mark Cuban has spoken previously about wanting to build like a casino district in Dallas where like there's a new arena, there's a casino, there's a resort, like everything like that. To me, that's what this strikes as to me, like Mark Cuban trying to set himself up to be able to set that up in Dallas, particularly partnering with the Adelson family, who has been so strongly within the gambling community in Las Vegas, and one of the richest families that you can partner with within that space. That's what stands out to me about this as much as anything. It kind of just makes me think that he's setting himself up for success in that respect moving forward.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes sense to me. That's not something that I'd thought about, but I think that um, that definitely is something that feels very much possible on the horizon. And I'm interested again, like you mentioned, I'm just kind of interested to see how it plays out.
All right, let's go to basketball stuff now. I want to start with the in-season tournament and just talk about how much I love the in-season tournament. It has been an awesome innovation, I think, to this point. Do you feel like I do, Mark, that the level of games that we see on a night-to-night basis has risen with the implementation of the in-season tournament? And real quick, JA in the YouTube comments brings up casinos are outlawed in Texas, fam. That's absolutely true right now. But continuing forward, there has been a lot of discussion about sports betting and the continued idea of gambling in general being legislated within Texas coming, maybe 2024. I think that recently it was said that they're not going to vote on it again until 2025. Look, sports betting is coming nationally. It's absolutely going to be a thing. Texas is going to end up legalizing sports betting in some way, shape, or form. It's just going to be dependent on how that ends up happening, I think. And yeah, I'm not really concerned that, it might take 1 year, it might take 2 years, it might take 5 years, but it might take 7 years, whatever, but it's going to come at some point. That's the way that the country is going at this point. In terms of the in-season tournament, Mark, where are you at in terms of the level of competition league-wide being lifted because of the in-season tournament?
I've absolutely loved it, man. It's interesting. I don't even know if it's necessarily that the competition has been raised more. I think it's just like the visibility has to an extent. Like I feel like there's been so much more emphasis on exposure with the in-season tournament games, and I think to me that has been awesome. I guess just with respect to like, okay, you're going to have different jerseys, you're going to have the different court, everything's going to be a little bit different. Maybe that does add like an extra level of like, okay, you're approaching this game with a slightly different mindset. But to me, again, like I think it just comes back to you get to watch these awesome games happen that do inherently mean a little bit more, depending on, regardless. I think it seems like players really have valued the in-season tournament. But again, it's more like you get to watch these awesome games that are counting towards something that's happening soon rather than later. Because I think, like, I don't know, the biggest thing that I've had to approach it with is remembering everything is not for me. Everything is not for it's really easy to like look at the, top 5% of NBA fans as 90% of NBA fans when that's just not reality. The idea is we want to bring in as many people as we can to be excited about the game, and maybe getting to watch, the Indiana Pacers go on the run that they have in the in-season tournament in a game that you maybe wouldn't have seen otherwise. And you get to see Tyrese Haliburton skipping after they come back from 30 points down to the Atlanta Hawks. Like maybe that gets some random kid excited about watching the NBA. And to me, it's done that in droves. I've absolutely loved it. I think that all of the bitching that got done about the in-season tournament was way over the top just because people don't like new things. But I've loved it, man. And I'm very excited to see the next thing. Also, I do have to remind people, the Indiana Pacers, really solid underdog long shot bet that probably is going to crunch down soon. So I'm not telling you what to do with your money, but with how well the Pacers have played in the in-season tournament, they were like plus 800 the other day to win the in-season tournament. So just saying.
That's an awesome number. I'm actually going to take a look to see with BetMGM where the in-season tournament numbers are. Just in terms of what the quarterfinals look like, Celtics at Pacers. That's going to be on December 4th. New Orleans Pelicans at Sacramento Kings on December 4th. New York Knicks at Milwaukee Bucks on December 5th. Phoenix Suns at Los Angeles Lakers on December 5th. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't really necessarily tracking like the standings of the in-season tournament throughout it. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I knew like what the Pacers needed to do to get into the in-season tournament, although I think they were the first ones to qualify, to be honest. So maybe I do know a little bit just through osmosis, but like I didn't know like the score differentials. Like I was talking to Hollinger while the Kings Warriors game was happening, and he was like on it. Like he knew exactly what was going on, like in terms of the point differentials. And I was like, John, you're a psycho. What's going on here? And I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I felt like the games in general were played at a really high level, especially some of those last games where qualification like really mattered, right? Like there were games where you needed to win by X number of points. The Celtics were out here like fouling Andre Drummond up 30 just in order to get to the in-season tournament quarterfinals. And I don't have a problem with that. Like Devin Booker talked about this today. And by the way, like Devin Booker,
shout out to
we
Booker.
need to
I
just
loved
get
that quote from him. That was great.
we need to get Devin Booker in front of a microphone as much as humanly possible. That's my new take on life at this point. Devin Booker, when he talks, it just like speaks to my basketball brain. Devin Booker, I've seen teams upset about it. I don't know why. I've seen players upset about it. I don't know why. I wish every game was like that, where you play until the end and it wasn't viewed as disrespectful, just high competition. 100% agree. Do I love fouling Andre Drummond in the third quarter to win by 45? Maybe not. But I think that if there's something you're competing toward and you're trying to like up your point differential, because that is what the league has set out is point differential, you got to do what you got to do. And I'm comfortable enough with it, even if it's not my favorite thing in the world. But in general, the competition level has just been really, really high. And I'm really, really excited to see where this goes. Like, I think that every single thing about this has just been awesome so far to me.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. And I'm excited for the knockout round coming up. It wraps like we are done with the in-season tournament by December 9th, if I remember correctly, which is like, so we have a lot to have happen over the next couple days, week and a half, however you want to put it. And I'm excited. I'm just excited to see like what all, okay, maybe there's a little bit different for in terms of production value in like the last few games. So I'm excited, man. And I'm straight up not even I do not bet. I don't put money down. But I do think legitimately that the Pacers they're my chance to win it. Like I think they're just like such a hard team to prepare for without like having actual like playoff timing around it. And they just have had a knack for absolutely blitzing teams when they need to. So I'm excited, man.
In-season tournament odds for those of you that care via BetMGM. Celtics 3-1, Bucks 3.5-1, Kings 5-1, Lakers 5.5-1, Suns 6-1, Pelicans 12-1, Pacers 14-1, Knicks 16-1. So you're riding with the Pacers as your long shot bet. It sounds like. Mm-hmm. I'm riding with the Pelicans as my long shot bet.
I don't mind. Trey Murphy's coming back. Did you see the dude? I love my favorite part about the Pels is how they tweet memes on social media. Honestly,
yeah, Larry Nance is great with it. Trey Murphy's great with it.
Did you see what Trey posted today?
I saw that it was like a baby like meme.
Oh,
I didn't see the whole thing though.
Are you too old for Vine?
Like, do you not remember Vine? I was around for Vine. Yeah, I'm not that old. Jesus Christ.
Well, like, did you actually like watch Vine? Is my point.
Yeah.
Okay, it was my name's Trey. I have a basketball game today. I have a shoe game. Like it's one of the all timers. So I question.
I don't think I know that Vine. Maybe I am old. Oh no. Yeah. Well, did we just come to a realization on the show that?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. That's like a top 10 Vine all time. So we might have to next pod I'm on live. We'll just watch a bunch of Vines together.
This is a disaster. This is a nightmare, Mark. Okay. So in-season tournament, I think the Celtics are going to win the in-season tournament, but if I had to take a long shot, I would take the Pelicans. Where are you at in terms of what you think is actually going to happen here?
That's a good question. I don't see it with the Celtics. Like, I think the Celtics are a team, like, they're obviously very, very good, but I think, like, to me, not that they, like, quote unquote, don't try hard in the in-season tournament. I don't mean it like that. I just think in terms of, maybe Jason's comments rubbed me the wrong way with respect to winning the in-season tournament. No, I think, like, it's probably more likely that they win it than not, but I don't have great analysis other than it feels like the Pacers are winning it. Like, that has just been, like, the vibe with them.
I love that take.
Every game. Like, seriously, like, that is just – especially with that Hawks game, I can't not say that they're going to win after they did that to the Hawks. That was sick.
That was like not real basketball.
It was not. It's very unserious. One of my favorite things that got tweeted of late was that the Pacers are actually a Ponzi scheme, so you can adjust your offensive rating and get stats. It's actually kind of remarkable. Somebody goes for a career high every other game they play the Pacers. It's
Yeah.
it's
Staggering.
We talked about that recently. Yeah, it is certainly something. But the offense, it's hard to deal with.
It's really hard to deal with their offense. Their offense is awesome, and they're like very difficult to play. Genuinely, the league itself does not have any games on Monday, December, or what is it? Sunday, December 3rd, I guess, in the United States, and then they have these 2 days where it's Tuesday and Wednesday. I think that they're just the the quarterfinals, I guess, of the in-season tournament. I'm excited to watch the in-season tournament. I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a really enjoyable time. Having said that, I think part of where the Pacers get their advantage is like teams coming in on a back-to-back, teams coming in on like a 2 and 3 night situation, and the Celtics should have like a little bit of a day off to be able to roll in and be okay in that game. We'll see. Okay. I want to go next to LaMelo Ball because this is one of the biggest bummers of the season to me so far. So for people who are unaware, LaMelo Ball is going to miss, it looks like a pretty decent amount of time here due to an ankle injury. I don't know. Like, do we feel like we have any details on the ankle injury yet? Like in terms of severity, it just says he's going to miss multiple weeks with an ankle sprain, but like LaMelo's ankles and like feet and things like that, like in the Ball family in general, anytime I hear that stuff, I get very worried in terms of just like the amount of time it's going to take for these guys to get back. I haven't seen much detail outside of multiple weeks. Have you?
No, I haven't seen anything other than that.
Yeah. And it sucks because LaMelo, I think, got a bit of a bad rap to start this season because his first 4 or 5 games, he was not awesome. Like we can just be upfront and transparent about that, right? We can say that LaMelo's first 4 or 5 games this year, he was okay. Like he wasn't playing up to his level. Over the next 9 games, he was, I think, probably one of the 5 best guards in the NBA. And I don't think that's an exaggeration. He was averaging 32 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists on 49% from the field, 44% from 3, 89% from the line, and was clearly on trajectory to be an all-star this season based on the way he was playing after that quick little 5-game adjustment after getting back from his injury to start the season. LaMelo has been phenomenal since that little blip. And not getting to see him continue along that pathway just absolutely sucks to me because I would really like to see him at some point just get a clean run. It feels like we haven't really seen him get a clean run without injury since really his second season, right? Like he played a bunch of games in his second season, but third season, he missed over half of his games last year. And now this year, he's going to miss significant time. We really just need to get him healthy and like wrap him in bubble wrap or something.
Yeah, and I think what's so hard too, and I want to preface this by saying like I think he will be back. Like I mean, not I think like obviously he's going to come back, but like I just hope that he doesn't lose the momentum he had here because was very clearly like making real strides to finishing the best that he ever has at the rim. Finishing well on his floaters too, which has been kind of a work in progress. And I just think like that's the kind of player we're talking about where, I mean, exactly like you mentioned, I think just all of the talk around him has driven me insane because anytime I hear LaMelo, it's always like, oh, well, empty stats or like, is he really contributing to win? I'm like, dude, they literally went to the playoffs.
No, guys, like watch
just
Hornets games without LaMelo and then watch them with LaMelo. The
Well, yeah.
level is so drastically different. Like they are so much better when LaMelo plays.
Yeah. And I think that's what makes this next part really difficult because now, like, I mean, the games that we've seen since he's been out, I think it was only one. They're just playing Terry Rozier at point guard and, multiple players handling the ball. But Ish Smith, who I love Ish Smith, but 35-year-old Ish Smith is their backup point guard now. Like, that's where the guard room is. And when you start talking about how many weeks he's going to miss, like maybe we're talking he doesn't play until 2024, that would be kind of my assumption. Not saying that that's right, but that's when I see like that injury prognosis, that's where I go to. I mean, we're talking about a team that might not eclipse 10 wins before then. Like, I would be surprised if they do, honestly.
It's going to be hard for the Hornets without LaMelo. Like, it's going to be really, really hard. They have a schedule here coming up. They get Brooklyn tonight. We'll see what happens there. That's at Brooklyn, though. Then they play Minnesota. That's probably a loss, given how Minnesota is playing and given how good they are defensively right now. Like, I think that is going to be really, really hard for Charlotte to manage. The Chicago Bulls, that could be a win. Like, they could win that on December 6th. The Toronto Raptors, then they get back-to-back against the Heat. They get the Pelicans, the 76ers, the Raptors again, the Pacers, the Nuggets, and then they go on this massive road trip at the end of the year where, those Raptors and Pacers games that I mentioned starting on December 18th and 20th, those are both on the road. They get a home game against Denver 2 days before Christmas. And then from December 26th until January 5th, they are on the road against Clippers, Lakers, Suns, Nuggets, Kings, Bulls. That is a massive road run that they desperately are going to need LaMelo back for if they have any chance to make the play-in tournament. And look, I don't really think they do, if I'm being completely honest. Even when LaMelo has been playing, they've been a minus 7.1 in terms of net rating. They still give up 121.5 points per 100 possessions. Their defense has just been an absolute sham this season. But without him, I mean, their offense just completely falls off of a cliff. Like, they are a 109 offensive rating without LaMelo. That's like basically worse than the league. It's going to be a real problem for them without LaMelo Ball. And if he doesn't get back, you do wonder at what point, like, okay, we're kind of shutting it down this year. We're going to start playing the kids again. Do you start moving Gordon Hayward? Do you start moving guys that you can? And I don't know. Like, that's what I'm most interested in now. Like, beyond it sucking that LaMelo is hurt, and that's terrible. And like, I'll go on a little spiel at the end here about like, me being bummed about that personally, but like, I'm really interested to see where the Hornets go from here. I guess it probably will depend on like if they're able to rack some wins against some of these teams that are 50-50 games here.
Yeah. I think kind of exactly like you mentioned, part of what's so difficult is that I mean, there was already kind of the weirdness of I don't remember the exact quote, so I don't want to misquote it, but like I want to win. Like, I'm here to win. And okay, so can you really just afford to hit reset right now and then piss off LaMelo? And it is what it is. Like, and to be fair, like, part of your pitch as a front office has to be like, hey, dude, like, it's not your fault, but like, injuries to you have contributed to us not being where we want to be. I think that there's a lot more that goes into that than that, but like,
yeah,
it's just a really difficult place because what move is happening right now that makes them better without, sacrificing a ton, or like I don't know. You can look at something as simple as like, okay, well, what if we move Terry Rozier because he's a bigger contract? Okay, well, Terry Rozier, like, even if he's not perfect, they struggle when he's not on the court because he's like, sneakily, this team has been awful shooting the ball. They're not shooting a lot. They're not shooting well. Granted, Terry has missed a decent amount of time himself, but he's integral to what they do spacing wise. If they move Gordon Hayward, like, okay, well, part of the reason Gordon Hayward has interest from teams is because he's still a good player. Like, he's not
Yeah.
an all-star, but he's still a good player. So you move him, and that's without mentioning too, like, I've heard that he's a solid vet for a lot of dudes in Charlotte, both on and off the court. So can you afford to move that? Like, there's a lot that goes
Right.
into it that just makes it difficult. And I do wonder too, like, if you start to move off some of the vets, then how does that impact some of the young guys? Because I don't think it's as simple as just like, oh, well, you move the vets and give the young guys more playing time and they'll get better. Like,
Right.
yeah, you get more reps, but that
We're
doesn't
going to talk
necessarily
about
mean you're
Detroit
better.
momentarily.
Yeah, exactly. So it gets really sticky for me. Like, maybe the right answer is you make a couple moves and you try and bring in some vets who are further down the rotation, but are still important in what you do. So I don't know. I don't know. It is difficult.
I think that you just kind of roll based off of, your situation, right? Like Gordon Hayward is an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season,
Yeah.
right? And who knows if he's going to be back. Is he worth more from an asset perspective than he is from a leadership perspective? That's a real question. Like, I don't necessarily know the answer to that. In Charlotte, honestly, given some of the issues that seemingly have occurred down there over the course of the last little while, maybe he is. Like, he really, that I would be willing to hear out a case that he is worth more from a leadership perspective than from an asset perspective. Like, he's worth more than a late first round pick or whatever he'd get, right? Uh, the other piece of this that like fucking sucks to talk about because he pled no contest to domestic violence charges, but like Miles Bridges is also an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year, and he has a no trade clause. But what do you do with him? I truly have no idea what you do with him, and I don't know that I really want to talk about it because I'm not ready to like shift the Miles Bridges conversation to him being more of a basketball player, but that floats in the air for them as well. Like, what if he just decides to leave? That's why bringing him back, in my opinion, was a mistake, both morally in terms of, him pleading no contest to those charges. And on top of it, you have no roster certainty now. Like, you don't know what you're building toward, in my opinion, with him. So yeah, they're in a really tough spot if LaMelo misses a month, because if he misses a month, they are in, they have like no chance to make the play in, and then they have all this roster uncertainty moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of gross. Honestly, it's not a position I want to be in. And then you start talking like, okay, well, they just brought back Steve Clifford, but now is it like, what do you do with that? Because I think part of what's difficult, and I understand that from a coaching standpoint of like, oh, like no job security, this and that. Like, okay, but when you are losing this much, it is really hard for people to not tune your voice out.
Yeah.
I think that's just something that we've seen happen time and time again. So again, it's one of the things I'm genuinely curious about. I think they did a lot of good things last year. But I mean, very clearly this has been a step backwards. And maybe step backwards is the wrong way to put it, but like it does not feel like better. So, and then obviously with this happening, it just makes it even more mucked up.
It really does. I'm ready to move on from the Hornets if you
Yep.
are.
Likewise.
Let's go on a quick commercial break here, and then we will be back to talk about the Golden State Warriors, because I have no idea what to do with that team.
Neither do they.
All right, Mark, we're back. Let's talk about Golden State. So the Warriors right now are sitting at 8-10. They have a, basically even net rating. They're middle of the pack in offense. They're middle of the pack in defense. And yet I feel like when I watch them, they're not getting the most out of what they can be. They've also dealt with, ins and outs of the lineup, right? I think Chris Paul and Andrew Wiggins are missing tonight's game. Draymond
GP2's
Green.
out for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. GP2 is out. Like Draymond Green missed 5 games in there. They're dealing with different things, right? Having said that, like Chris Paul, Andrew Wiggins, Klay Thompson, Stephen Curry, Kevon Looney, they've all played 18, or they've all played at least 16 of their 18. I'm sorry. So, and plus Saric, Kuminga, Moody, like they've been mostly healthy, like not crazy healthy, but mostly healthy. Really, they have been healthy. It's just that Draymond has missed time and Gary Payton is going to miss some time here. Every time I watch them, I feel like they are trying to put off the inevitable almost. Like Andrew Wiggins has really, really struggled this year. He played great against the Kings in the game that I think we're going to talk a little bit about specifically. But like he's really struggled this year. You have to hope that the shooting comes back. Klay Thompson is not he's not Klay Thompson anymore. Like we need to probably be understanding about that, right, Mark?
Yeah, no, like you have to be for real about it. I think like he's upticked a little bit recently, but at the same point, like you're mentioning, like it's okay if that's the uptick, then shit. I mean, when you're talking about what the contract is, uh, that's hard conversations have to be had if you want to talk about maximizing Stephen Curry still.
Yeah. Like Klay Thompson over his last 5 games in regard to that uptick, 18.8 points, 41% from the field, but 43% from 3, 89% from the line, but not getting there a ton, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And I don't know how you feel about his defense. I do feel like it has not been great this season, especially comparatively to what we have seen from him previously. Where are you at on Klay's defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think his defense has taken a dive the last couple of years, especially last year. I think it was pretty noticeable when it first like started to be noticeable for me. Like he still can do good things. I think it's more like he's okay, but he went from being like a borderline all defense guy to like okay. And I think that plays out in they're what 17th in defense right now. I'm personally, I don't know about you, I'm more worried about the offense than the defense as a whole. But I agree with Klay. It's just like he has a $43 million player option at the end of this year, and I don't really. I mean, do you think he doesn't take it? Like,
I'd be pretty staggered. Like he doesn't. I don't think he has a player option for what it's worth. I think he's a
oh wait,
free
no, I
agent
read
at
it
the end
wrong.
of the
My
year.
bad.
Yeah, but that makes it even more complicated. Like he's a free agent and he obviously wants a contract. Do you bring him back? Like, yeah, you try and bring him back. He's Klay Thompson, but again, Klay was making $43 million this year. What is the number? Like, is he going to be willing to take a pay cut to stick around? Draymond Green has taken pay cuts to keep these guys together for years upon years, right? Draymond could have made $35 million a year every year of his career for the last 8 years. And instead he decided to stick around and, took 25 basically a year. Is Klay going to be willing to repay that in kind? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody knows the answer to that yet. Based on his play right now, like I don't know what he's worth. I mean, he's like maybe you do. Like, what would you pay him right now? Is kind of the question, right?
It's a good question. Because he's 33. So I think part of what's difficult is you're talking about okay, what's the length of the contract? Is it descending? I don't think that he would want to take it descending. I don't know. Like I don't know Klay personally, but just like based on everything he's said or how he's talked about, and he has every right to be confident in himself and talk about his worth. Like I'm not questioning that, but I don't think I would be even like paying him 30 for the next couple of years would be pushing it for me.
Yeah, like
With
Chris
where I feel
Middleton
him.
took like 30 basically.
Yeah.
Like that was what he got. I don't think I would want to pay Klay that much. Like to me, it's probably in the 20 range.
Yeah.
And I think this is probably why Bob Myers was like, "Hey, see you guys. I'm going to go be on ESPN for a little while.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody will offer me a different job, maybe not, but I'm going to go hang out on ESPN because I don't want to make these tough decisions." Like,
I can't blame him.
I can't blame them. It's hard when you're dealing with franchise icons, right? So I'm intrigued to see where that piece of it goes. But for this season, particularly, they need him to be at the level he's been at the last 5 games, realistically. And more than that, they need to play Moses Moody, I think is where we're at here.
Yeah.
Moses Moody is very good at basketball. Like he's truly just good at basketball at this point. If you look at their per 100 possession numbers, Moses Moody's numbers are not that far off of Klay Thompson's at this point in terms of even like counting numbers, points, rebounds, assists, everything like that. Obviously, he's ahead of Klay in rebounding. The assist numbers are not all that different. Steals way ahead, blocks about equal. He's been more efficient than Klay this season, just as an overall interior finisher as well. I think there's like a non-zero chance Moses Moody is about as good as Klay Thompson is at basketball at this point.
I'm probably not quite there yet, but I think when you talk about like baseline that he brings, I get it. Especially like yesterday, pulling him with what he was doing in the fourth quarter, and not riding the hot hand was, that was kind of vexing to watch.
Like the thing that people compared it to was because Wiggins came in for Moody, right? It was like, well, Andrew Wiggins had 29 points in that game, and Steve Kerr said after the game, we wanted to get Wiggins's defensive ability in because we needed somebody to guard De'Aaron Fox. Well, Klay used to be the guy that like was guarding those point of attack guys. It's now Wiggins because Klay can't do it anymore. I think you have to bring Wiggins in for Klay. I don't think you can bring Moody off of the court. That was the substitution to make there.
I'll say too, like I think with Wiggins, I don't want to be overly harsh because I know yesterday was a solid game from him, but I think my biggest thing that I keep coming back to is just even with him scoring 29 yesterday, the aggression is just is probably where it's more difficult for me. Like majority of those points came in the first half. I think he struggled a little bit more in the second half. Was still fine, but like there was a play where like they started the Kings started blitzing Steph near half court at towards the end of the third quarter. And there was a play, I think probably a minute or two into the fourth, where Wiggins is the roll man, takes the ball short roll, defense doesn't step up, and he kicks out to Saric on the wing for three. And I'm like, last year I felt like Wiggins is driving that and getting to the rim and getting to the free throw line. And again, like this is not just like he did do good things yesterday, and I think he overall had a solid game, but that is what it has felt like a lot from him this season. You get a lot of moments like that where it's like, damn, like you are too good to be passing up this opportunity. Like it, just because it looks like the right play because somebody's open. Like I want Andrew Wiggins attacking the basket instead of kicking the ball to Dario Saric if the defense isn't actually moving and reacting. And like when you talk about how few shots this team actually takes from two, and you talk about the offense as a whole, like they are pretty anemic right now. Like they're 14th in offensive rating. It feels pretty average to slightly below. Like if Steph is not on a heater, it's rough, particularly with their front court. And I think there's a lot more to talk about with that outside of just Wiggins and Klay. But like that's part of why I'm there with Moody too. I think when I look at how the roster's been built in all of the years where they've been fantastic, it's worked because they have guys who are very good offensively that give you options on the defensive end. Right now, they have options on the defensive end, but they aren't good offensively. Like, I think there's a lot more with that, but I think that's why, to me, like, Moody only playing like 16, 17 minutes a game is wild to me because he's somebody who you can count on both ends, that is going to be aggressive, that gives you size, gives you some length, and I think they need to lean into that.
Well, and two things there. So you mentioned the idea of like they've been successful largely through like unselfish play and like being able to move the ball around, play within that motion offense, obviously having the gravity of Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson to be able to maneuver around. But it's a big piece of it, right? Is that unselfishness. And, Marcus Thompson brought that up in what I think was like the perfect takeout on that game. He said that, and this is just his lead, right? The Warriors believe in appeasing the proverbial basketball gods. Their fealty toward hardwood's higher power is part of their ethos. At the core of the rampant success they've had over the last decade, they constantly pay tribute with selfless screens, extra passes, running the floor hard, all in the name of playing the right way and not cheating the game. Tuesday night, they sinned against Moses, which is just like a beautiful Marcus
He's such
Thompson
a good
line.
writer. I just full stop. Marcus is one
Marcus
of my
is the
favorite
best.
writers, man. He's so good.
And he's just like I don't know if you've gotten to know Marcus. He's like one of the best people.
I haven't. He's somebody I'd love to get to know him someday. But like, point being, like, I think there are so many people who like try and write poetically, and it just comes off corny. And I never feel it feels harder hitting when Marcus does it. And I appreciate
it's
that.
why
It's
I
not
don't
something I'm
do
good at
it.
doing. Yeah.
It's why I don't do it. Marcus is drastically better at it than I will ever be. Look, like to me, that's kind of a great statement on where the Warriors have been this season. Like they are truly caught between two eras right now, I think. And the guy that like should be bridging that era almost is Andrew Wiggins, right? Not in terms of being a star anymore, but like, being in between that age group, right? Of the younger guys, Moses Moody, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Pajemski, and the older guys, Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, right? Wiggins, according to Kendra Andrews at ESPN, formerly of The Athletic, said certain members within the Golden State Warriors organization have expressed frustration with Andrew Wiggins' apparent lack of physical conditioning as well. So that's a piece of this here that I don't know what to do with either. To me, all of this lines up. Like, I've really liked what Chris Paul has given them this season. I've generally thought this has been like a phenomenal Steph start to the year. And God, I have no idea where they would be without Stephen Curry right now. Like if Steph was anything less than like 100% of what he's been so far, which is like complete and utter superstar, one of the 5 or 6 best players in the league in all likelihood to this point. If he was anything less than that, this team would be nowhere. And Steph will probably continue to play at this level, but like this level is insane for a 35-year-old. Like it's truly insane. So I think, look, I've wondered if like there's going to be a shakeup move with the Warriors a couple of times throughout the trajectory of their dynasty, their great run here of the Curry era. I think that this is the year where it probably has to happen. Maybe not Steph, Klay, and Dre, but like I actually do think they need to make some sort of move here just to like, either open up minutes, take clubs out of the bag for Steve Kerr, maybe. Like Steve Kerr, we need to keep it up, like keep it real here. I don't like what Steve Kerr has done this season with their rotations, with their minutes. I think that he has, I don't want to say like maybe mismanaged a little bit of playing the young guys and figuring out what they can do. Like if you're the Warriors, you should be using these minutes early in the season. Find out what these guys can do. Don't play Corey Joseph. I'm sorry. Like Corey Joseph isn't valuable to an NBA team on the court anymore. I'm sure he's valuable in terms of what he brings in terms of leadership, but like he's not as good as Pajemski, in my opinion, at this point. Even he's not as good as Moses Moody, guys like that. Play them more minutes.
Yeah, and I think part of one of the things I'm interested in seeing too, it just like I think Kuminga has turned himself into a very good defender. Like I'm comfortable just saying like he does quite good things on the defensive end of the court and has been way more consistent with that this year. The shot is just not there. And I think more importantly, he's just not getting, he's getting guarded like that exactly. I think he's done better things putting the ball on the deck and attacking and finishing. He still isn't there in terms of like doing the 0.5 things with the Warriors. And for me, like, even like it's tough because in some ways they really need his athleticism. They need his size in the front court. but like it's a really rough fit with Draymond. I think their minutes together have been not great. The minutes with him and Saric have been pretty solid, but the minutes with him and
Yep.
Looney at times have been difficult as well. Like, again, I think Looney is capable as a starter, but you limit what you can do around him if you have Kevon Looney as a starter.
Yeah.
And I think, like, to me, I do think moving on from Kuminga, not like I don't think that you should quote unquote have to move Kuminga to ramp up Moses Moody's minutes, but like when you're talking about other avenues to maybe open some things up, I do think that's important because I just don't know if it's going to
Yeah.
happen.
In that situation. And look,
no,
this
yeah,
is an
in Golden
argument.
State.
I made this argument in the preseason too. Like, to me, Kuminga is the guy that like makes sense for them to move because you're gonna have to decide on paying him this summer. He is a guy that clearly has talent, but it's not a fit with your current core. And we're 2.5 years now in, and we kind of know that at this point. Where if you're going to continue to attach yourself to Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, Gary Payton II as well, like another guy that's really hard to manage with Kuminga out there just from a spacing and shooting perspective, especially in the playoffs when you go up against some of the great teams that will take away non-shooters in that way. I still think he's the guy. I still think I think it would be good for him to get a change of scenery. And I think that it would probably be good for the team to get something that fits a little bit better around their aging core.
You know where he'd look kind of sick?
Indiana. I know what you're going to
so
say.
I would really like him in Indiana. But I think, again, like it goes back to this too, because I do have to highlight Dario Saric has been awesome this year. That's been one of my favorite stories this year has been him just like his shot kind of coming back to life over the last year and a half, and mainly
in the synergy between him and Chris Paul too.
Yeah, but I think again, like it speaks to some of the difficulty. Like they need him to be that good because of what everything else is looking like. And I think when you're at that stage talking about how important like a 6th or 7th man is, like it is a little bit indicative of what your starters are. Yeah, I think that's the last thing I'd add on it. But
no, I think that's a good addition to end on. In terms of what they need to get, like I think Mark said it really well. 2-way players is it to me. Like you need to go find guys that can play on both ends of the court. That's more what they need to find. And you can use the Chris Paul deal. Honestly, like I'm open to moving Kevon Looney if I'm them. I'm open to moving Gary Payton. If you move Kuminga and one of those two, you can get up into like, you might be able to get somebody worth like 20 million, something like that. So I would say that right around those numbers make sense. Or you could move the Chris Paul deal and, get another max guy basically with Kuminga. So it'd be really interesting to see what they do. I also want to talk about the Kings. Really, you wanted to talk about the Kings.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you the floor on Sacramento. I've watched them probably 3 or 4 times this year. I would say that they are among the teams I've probably watched the least of this year. So I do want to give you the floor. I'll give some just like general takeaways on what I've seen, but like I'll give you the floor on this more than myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're in such an interesting spot because they're Steve Jones and Nekias Duncan were talking about this on the Dunker Spot, and it wasn't about the Kings, but Steve mentioned this, talking about the Cavs, like their record maybe isn't as good right now as it was last year, but you could kind of see some room where they'd been improving and things have gotten better. And for me, watching the Kings this year, I think that's applied. I think a lot has been made out of like, oh, well, they're only like 10-7 and the shot luck is regressing to the mean and all that. And I just keep watching them, and I think like I like the balance in their roster more this year. There are some questions that I have that we'll get to later because I want to keep it positive to start. Like I have loved Sasha Vezenkov just coming in and being like a really solid player. He was huge in that game against the Warriors. Didn't play until the late 3rd, early 4th, and then was absolutely massive in
Comes in there and fires.
Exactly. Comes in there and fires, gets a massive block, helping off strong side on Steph. Like, it's like, damn, okay, he's here. Like, Keon Ellis has made some contributions defensively. Like Chris Duarte is still kind of looking for the efficiency, but I think you get the idea of like, oh, hey, it's not Terrence Davis, and this guy's a little bit bigger, and you get some of the same ideas. Trey Lyles is back and has been fantastic, and of course necessary. Like, I just look at this group, and even my biggest thing that I keep coming back to last year, I always felt the defense was better than the numbers indicated. Not that I thought it was good, but it was more like, okay, these guys are doing their jobs. Like they're rotating hard as hell. They're doing what Mike Brown wants. But I think it's about, how does it start to rein in? How do they start to find ways to like tweak it, be a little bit more within the scheme, KYP more, just like being more on top of, instead of like having some of the recklessness that they played with last year, because it was always just like balls to the wall madness. Like this year, I feel like they have started to really find some of the wrinkles of like, and we saw it in that, not in the first half against the Warriors, but I think second half, like, okay, they start to sprinkle in a little bit of zone and then start doing some of the blitzing later on, which it wasn't perfect, but it slowed down the Warriors, had a couple possessions where it really worked out for them. You saw some good stuff rotationally. They just have more answers. Like Kessler Edwards only played like 5 or 6 minutes in that game, but it's like, oh, hey, we can try Kessler Edwards off the bench instead of last year. Again, like here's Terrence Davis. Like, not to just keep throwing him under the bus, but I also don't really mind doing that. But like then, okay, you just have more optionality. And I feel like Fox has really stepped up defensively this year as well. Not that I thought, again, like I don't think he was awful last year, but this year I've been really impressed with like they just went out and they're like, okay, we don't want to put this in a situation of everything happening with Draymond. You're just obliterating one of our bigs by having them on Draymond, and you do a bunch of stuff killing us with dribble handoffs. So they put Fox on Draymond. And that ended up being huge down the stretch because, all right, it starts to slow down. They're not running things through Draymond, and he's just helping hard off of him. There were a couple plays where he ends up stripping Clay, stripping Steph, just helping at the nail because Draymond's spaced above the break and he doesn't have the ball. And, like, again, small stuff. And more importantly, too, like, I keep seeing mentioned like Keegan Murray is regressed. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. I don't feel bad about his offense. Like it's small sample. I think it'll come
He's
back
just
up.
missing shots. Yeah.
But,
we talked about this with Bryce Simon earlier this week on the Sophomores podcast. Like he's been really good on defense so far.
That's what I was going to bring
up. The shot just isn't falling. Like I've seen nothing from Keegan Murray where I'm like, this is a real point of concern moving forward.
No, exactly. That's where I'm at. Like, I think I've just been impressed with that growth for him becoming a guy like, hey, like I can do some stuff on the ball defensively. And I think that's the kind of player that they've really lacked. Like he's moving his feet well. His change of direction looks a little bit better this year. He's trying to get over screens. Like, again, it's not perfect, but it's something. And I think when you look at the sum total, that has me really excited for what that can be. Like, again, I'm not expecting them to be a top 10 defense, but I think we're talking about a team that's like comfortably average on defense or getting close to it. And that matters for where their offense is at because their offense is better than the 12th ranked offense. They have definitely suffered from early poor shooting slumps from people. But I think then you look at everything else, like Fox is somehow better this year. Like he's averaging 30 a game. He's getting to the line more. It just like, I think I come away so impressed with him every time I watch because I'll never forget watching him at Kentucky and then, first couple of years in the league and it's just crazy madness all over the place, the fastest dude you've ever seen other than John Wall. And then like, obviously it started happening more over the last year or two, specifically last year, but then this year he's just even more in control. And I love that. Like, and I think it's cool because now you've seen too, like, I feel like they've worked. I don't have like numbers in front of me to back it up, but I feel like they have worked in more of, hey, we have a mismatch here instead of like focusing on getting into our motion. What if we attack this and play off of it? And I just liked that. I feel like they're adding in more optionality, and that has mattered to me a lot for a team that what we can talk more about their quote unquote quote ceiling and what they can do moving from here. But it's stuff that I've really been impressed with Mike Brown, continue to be impressed with Mike Brown and just his team at large this season.
Yeah, it's really fun to try and figure out like the drivers of their positive play. I think that if you look at the numbers, it's just all De'Aaron Fox, like point blank. Like De'Aaron is the guy that drives everything for them. And I know that like Sabonis, he's a critical part just in terms of the synergy that he has with De'Aaron. And I don't want to take that away from him. He's averaging 19 and 12 right now and shooting 59% from the field. But if you look at the numbers for Sabonis, like without De'Aaron on the court, like it's been a real issue. And even numbers with Sabonis and Fox, like they're a minus 3.7 this season. Hold on, that's without Sasha Vezenkov. The Sabonis and Fox numbers are in total a negative this season. They're minus 0.1 because the defense has just been a continued issue for them. And, we'll have to figure out where it goes. What I will say is that, like, when you start to add Vezenkov into the lineup for them, their numbers just like go through the roof in general. Vezenkov with De'Aaron Fox without Sabonis, they are a plus. Vezenkov with Sabonis without Fox, they're like minus 2.7, but that's like drastically better than all of the non-Fox minutes. Just Vezenkov on the court without Sabonis and Fox, they are winning those minutes somehow. And then if you start to add in Vezenkov 2 lineups with Sabonis and Fox, they are like drastically plus. They're like minus, or in 30 minutes, they're like plus 30, right? And the thing that I always was really interested in was like the Vezenkov Sabonis pairing, particularly because Vezenkov in Europe and still now has been this incredible cutter who can knock down shots with his quick release, quick trigger off of kickouts and everything, like no ball dip, just can fire that thing up and go. Vezenkov and Sabonis lineups this season, they are a plus 9.3 with a 122 offensive rating to this point. Just play Sabonis and Vezenkov together is kind of my take, as much as humanly possible. But even in the minutes without Sabonis, Vezenkov has played, they're winning those minutes. Vezenkov has been super useful for the Kings. They know how to use him, which I think is the most critical part. Like, you can't just throw him out there and say, hey, we're giving you 30 minutes a night and it's going to be like all sweet. But I think that you can stand to play him a little bit more situationally to help their spacing, to help their overall offensive movement. I think his impact has been quite positive.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the next thing I'd point to as well, like Malik Monk has been awesome. Yes. He was huge in that game yesterday, especially late. I still just like marvel at some of the finishes he has, man. Like, I have no idea how he puts the ball in the basket sometimes, but has stepped right back into being that guy that he was for them last year. Hasn't had like his crazy heater stretch yet, which I'm waiting on because he's on my fantasy team. But again, like, continues doing extremely good things. I feel like even, again, like, part of it's just scheme getting better, but I feel like his defense has been a little bit better this year. Still not amazing, but like, you just see a little bit more, and that makes me happy because I want to keep seeing that small improvement. You mentioned Domas, and I think, like, again, it's tough because, just banking in, like, he played the games that Fox missed and they got killed in those games, that's partially on him. But I do think like that just drives down the numbers so much. But also Davion started in those games, the majority, well, not all of them, but a couple of them that Fox missed. And that's kind of where I start coming to wanting to talk about stuff. Like, I've been, I came to the light with Davion at first, and because he's had good stretches for the Kings. And I think the biggest thing I keep coming back to, like, even though like his offense has never been awesome with the Kings, like, we can start there, but he is still good defensively, but he is not like the insane 99th percentile defense that he was playing his first 2 years, in my opinion. Like, I think that there were moments where he lost it at times last year. Like, it just depends in the moment, but I don't think it's been the same this year. And I'm not saying that it's an effort thing. That would be unfair, but it just, like, I think it is much harder to deal with the offensive stuff when he is not playing defense at the level that, like, he needs to be the best guard defender in the NBA, essentially, to be playable with what his offense is right now. And he's not. And I think it just keeps coming back to me. Like, he's not a good fit with Sabonis. Like, he and Sabonis just, like, do not have good synergy together. I think that there has been an attempt to, like, and I'm not saying that it's on either of them. It's just like what makes Davion work is being a pick and roll ball handler who can get to the rim. And I think having a lob threat would be good for him. That's not this team. That's not what they do. He doesn't see the court like that. Like he sees, I think he's so much better at seeing what's right in front of him. He's not somebody who's good at like just feeling out things happening on the side or around him. Like the vision is hurt. He's not finishing well or even close to well this year. It feels like honestly teams are just like loading up to wait for him at the rim right now.
Yeah.
And it's either barrel into it or like nothing's the point being when he drives in the lane, it feels like nothing happens to the defense. Like this, not saying the scout is out on him would be like, I mean, I guess that's correct, but that's very much how it's felt in watching. And I just kind of don't know where you go from here because like obviously they benched him for a couple games. He got some DNP CDs. And when that starts happening, I'm like, oh, okay. Because we went from him starting to him getting down to here. And like it's just in a weird spot for me, and I don't really know what they do about it.
And I don't think it's the wrong decision either.
No, I agree. Like he was not playing winning basketball for them. He was not contributing to a team that like they want to be back. Like they need to be back in the playoffs. So it's not even like they need to go farther than the playoffs. That's what they want to do this year. So if he's not contributing to that, then yeah, he should be benched.
Well, and like the next piece of it is like I actually don't know what his trade value is, really.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what they would get for him, which makes it even more complicated when trying to determine what to do with him because they need the skill set. Like they do need another like great point of attack defender. Like they could really use that, but you have to find a way to balance that. Like I don't know, man. I just truly don't know. It's hard. It's a really, really hard spot to be in for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to say about the Kings here? I think they're a playoff team. Like having seen them
they're a
few
clear
times I've
playoff
seen
team.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're a clear playoff team. Like again, like everything has started to kind of round it back into form. Like Harrison Barnes looked like he was absolutely cooked the first 5-6 games of the season.
He's
been better. I still think like it's just in a tough place with me for him. Because like I think on one hand, like he does things that are important that the team needs. Like he just is a consistent player you can throw the ball to and he will score. And he spaces the floor.
Yeah.
Defensively, I don't want to talk about it. But he's not good defensively. That's the point. But like, it's just, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels like they probably waited too long to really move him and get anything back. And my thing is more like, who do you move him for / what do you do moving him that makes you better?
No, I think you keep him. Yeah. Like,
yeah. So
he's more useful for them than he would be elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. And like I don't mean that to disparage Harrison. I just think like I know that's been like a big talking point around them in general.
No, like if they're gonna move somebody, to me, like it's you decide what you're gonna do with like Monk and Herter, right? Like you want the bigger bodies, I think, in the playoffs, especially given what your center position is, right? Like, and given that you might need to play Vezenkov a little bit, like you want the bigger bodies, you want the dudes that are capable defensively in some way, shape, or form. I know Harrison hasn't been great on that end, but like you can make him work defensively in the playoffs, I think, just because he's big, he's long, he's athletic. Like I don't think teams attack him either, like is a big piece of it. Like I don't think teams like go into games they're like, we're going to try and like go at Harrison time after time because he's big and long and generally can stay in front of guys. I think that if they're going to try and make a move, like somebody brought up, like get into the Pascal, Siakam, OG Anunoby discussions. If I was them, I'd be going to try and get Pascal Siakam.
I would do anything. And it would. I will say
a very obvious fit.
Him and Sabonis is an odd fit as a front court though. But I think it's so much talent that you do it anyways. But like,
yeah,
it's something I've thought about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that I'm with Drew completely. But
now I'm trying to decide, does that work? Because they both like that mid post area. They both like to kind of operate in those spaces. It would kind of actually be similarly weird to make that work. Maybe it is OG that would make more sense for them, actually. I think that probably is right. But like if it's OG, I guarantee you they ask for Keegan Murray back. And like,
So
honestly,
no,
if it's
not do it.
Siakam, given the way that they do trades, like I guarantee they ask for Keegan Murray back anyway. And I don't know if I want to do that if I'm Sacramento. So given that those guys are both expiring deals, and given with OG particularly, you can't actually re-sign him in the season. Like you have to wait until the offseason when he's an unrestricted free agent. So that's tricky in and of itself. So in theory, I like the idea of them being involved for Siakam and OG, but like, I mean, what are the assets you're giving up is kind of the question.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. And they need to decide, like, are we willing to give up Keegan Murray? My answer would be no on a lot of things. You know, maybe a superstar, but on a lot of things it'd be no. And B, are we willing to like mortgage all of our picks moving forward? And maybe they are. Like that might be they might be willing to do that. That's more intriguing to me. Okay. Let's talk about the Detroit Pistons. I know that a lot of people in the comments have been waiting, given the way that the comments have been blowing up, and I've seen them. The Detroit Pistons are the worst basketball team I've seen this season in the NBA by far. They are 2-15. They are in a 15-game losing streak. They have not won since they're on a 14-game losing streak. The Knicks game, I think, is 15 that they're going for here. Or no, they're 2-16. I lied. Yeah, I'm an idiot. They are 2-16. They have lost 15 in a row. I thought they'd lost 15 in a row. They lost by 26 to the Lakers. They lost by 19 to the Wizards. They lost by 23 to the Pacers. They lost by 4 to a Nuggets team where Nikola Jokic got ejected within 15 minutes and Jamal Murray did not play. Mike Malone also got ejected in that game. They lost by 29 to the Toronto Raptors. They lost by 8 to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that this was, probably their best performance, but even then that was a Cavs team without Donovan Mitchell and they still lost by by 8 points. They lost to the Hawks in a game that the Hawks, I believe, sat Trae Young, and they lost that game by 6. They lost to the Chicago Bulls, which is a disaster in and of itself. I don't think we need to say more about that. It's just been horrendous after horrendous result. If they lose tonight, as William says in the comments, it's a winless November. I think this team has been mismanaged from a fit perspective, as I've been talking about since the summer. I thought that they might be okay just in terms of like having vets around now. I hope that Joe Harris might be able to do something. Obviously, Bojan Bogdanovic has not played. He might play on Saturday. But I think that this team is just mismanaged from a fit perspective. Point blank is where I'm at on it. And on top of it, I think that Monty Williams has not done any favors in terms of his rotations. Like the last 2 games, he's brought in James Wiseman ahead of Marvin Bagley. Like, guys, Marvin Bagley has maybe been the Pistons' like 3rd best player this season, 4th best player this season. That's an indictment of the Pistons on some level, but he's been useful. Like he can score. He's at least like trying on defense. It's hard. Like you watch the Pistons and it's hard. And I'm at the point where like, I'm just not going to watch them again until we make like, I say we, like I'm a Pistons fan. I'm not, but like until we see substantive changes, be it front office, be it, roster, just make a shake-up trade, anything like that. Do something. The Pistons front office, according to James Edwards, has been like, hey, let's wait until we see what they look like with Bojan Bogdanovic. Guys, like Bojan Bogdanovic is a good player. Like he's a starting quality NBA player. Bojan is not like a savior to an NBA team. Even if his skill set is exactly what that NBA team needs, Bojan's a good player, but like he's not coming in and saving this team from losing, 60 games this year. So there's got to be something that happens. Mike Scotto reported that they denied 2 first-round picks for Bojan Bogdanovic. That's crazy to me. We're seeing what they look like without Bojan, but like this is a team that has limited pick capital to trade because of that crazy Isaiah Stewart deal they made on draft night in 2020, where they extended like the pick protections out until like 2027. Like I can't figure out where to even go with this. Like Boyan is, freaking 34 now, or he's about to, he's 34, turns 35 this season. I just, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the number of things that have been mismanaged here. And ultimately the thing that like bothers me most is that I have no idea what Cade Cunningham can do, because I have no idea what he looks like in a competent situation.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. I think.
Yeah, I ranted for like 5 minutes. I'm sorry. It's an
No, you're good. I think first and foremost, like you mentioned, I do think it's just like this is not a good roster. I think a lot of the potential of this roster, I think, or the potential of guys on this roster was kind of used to mask how bad the roster is, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was a lot of, well, Cade could be this, or Duran could be this, or Jaden could be this. And like, yeah, okay, they could, but it's not even close to that yet. And then you look at what everything else is, and it's really difficult. I know I've said difficult a million times on this podcast, but it doesn't change. Like, on one hand, yes, it is you can't go without saying that they missed their three best shooters for the entire first month of the season. Livers is back now, obviously, but Monte Morris had a setback. Bojan is back soon. But also, like, okay, yes, you're missing three players, but in the modern NBA, you should still be able to maintain a similar level of floor spacing when you have three players out. Like, I get the idea that, like, these are our three best shooters and we miss them a lot. But also, you got to have a roster built where you can have some kind of balance in floor spacing, even if you have significant injuries, because those are bigger injuries, but like that's a starter and two guys coming off the bench. That's not like, that shouldn't be the end of the world for your entire offense. Granted, like those are all your vets for the most part, but I just think overall when you're talking about it, like it should not be as catastrophic as it ended up being. Like that goes without saying. I do think too, to be fair, because I've gone back and forth with a lot of people on this. Maybe it helps because I was never one of the, Cade is going to be better than Luka guys, but I do think you can be true in two sentences and say, like, I don't think Cade has been awesome. Like, I think he's done very good things still. I think he's gotten too much shit from people online who are not actually watching the games, if we're being blunt. I think it's fair to say that he has not looked as athletic as you would hope, but I also think if you'd watched him at Oklahoma State, you wouldn't have really come in thinking that he's going to be God. But I don't think that you can go on some of these rampages shitting on him without looking at what this floor looks like. Because again, like two things are true at the same time. The floor is absolutely not tilted in his favor, and he hasn't done a great job capitalizing on it either way. But like, that's the problem. Like, you're asking somebody who's 22 to completely carry this offense. And I think I've seen like, and I don't just mean to keep making this like what discourse is, but like I've seen a ton of like, oh, well, the problem is Cade, he's doing too much. I'm like, have you seen the rest of the roster? Like, I do think there are moments where Cade definitely is trying to do too much, but also who else is doing it? Like,
yeah, like Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren, if you give them the ball, they are like the only two players in the league right now that have a usage rate lower than 20 that average over 2.5 turnovers per game. Right. So like they can't do it.
I'm
they can't
really
create
excited
offense.
about Asar's future, but like he looks like Tony Allen on offense at times. Like that's where he's
Yeah.
at and how he gets guarded. And I think like there's a lot of
Yeah.
great things in his future, but again, like I think it is that much more difficult with him on the court offensively because of what the rest of the spacing is. Like I think the idea of making him work as an offensive player, it's just really tough because like you see the cool passes, you see some of the cool things he does in transition, and like your click, it clicks in your mind like, oh, this is a good offensive player. But no, like it is really difficult with him on the court with the bigs. And I think that goes into the next part. Like, I just think the two big stuff needs to die, to be honest. That is the next stage for me in this roster. Like, I do not think, like, you have to have the exact right pairing of bigs to actually make it work. And then even then, like, you can't play too big the entire game. Like, there have been moments where they're like, there was a game where Marvin Bagley played like minutes at the 3. And like, it is just like, no, like, that can't happen. That's it's, I don't know, man. You can keep going too, but that's
well, so yeah, just to like continue to compound on like the Cade thing, right? Okay, so Asar and Duran, like, they can't create, right? That just isn't something that they can do yet, and that's okay. That doesn't make them non-interesting prospects. It's just they can't create with the ball in their hand. Killian Hayes, for the 4th consecutive year, has like a true shooting percentage below 48%, right? And that's as true shooting percentages league wide have jumped. So his, to look at his true shooting percentage compared to league average, it's 20% below league average right now, right? His effective field goal percentage is 20% below league average. Can't have him with the ball in his hands. Not a good enough scoring threat. Marcus Sasser, like, if you want to make a case for Marcus Sasser to be in the game more, I'm good with that. Like, I'm 100% good with that. He's been pretty effective when I've watched him this season. The other guy is Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey's been awesome this season. Like, truly, I think Ivey has taken a real leap. He's much more patient with the ball in his hands. He is able to actually make things happen without turning the ball over. I think Jaden Ivey has been really, really solid this season. If you look at like the per possession numbers, if you look at the per possession efficiency, it's so much better. The turnovers are still there. And that's, again, to me, when you're a team that has zero spacing, it's easier to turn the ball over because teams are collapsing down on you. It's easier to have guys just digging into your handle all the time. It's harder to find, effective kick out passes when you have no spacing. So, part of it is that just structurally, there are real issues with the Pistons right now as well. But even in spite of those structural issues, Jaden Ivey this season is averaging 12.3 points, 3.2 assists on 51% from the field, 36% from 3, 78% from the line. He's been pretty effective as a scorer. Like, I would like to see him have the ball, more. And I think that they're doing that a little bit more now since he's entered the starting lineup, right? I say all this to say, like, they really only have like one. Let's combine. Let's say Ivy and Sasser are like both like halves right now in terms of guys like you would be really comfortable with, like, in a winning situation, giving the ball to, right? Those are the only other guys that Cade has out there. He has to have this usage for this team. It's not valuable for him to have this usage, but he has to have it because who the fuck else is going to take it? You're going to have Marvin Bagley post-ups. You're going to have James Wiseman rolling to the rim. You can't do it. This is why Bojan getting back will be helpful. Like, Bojan, you can throw the ball on, like, to him on the block in mismatches. He can create in advantage situations. Like, Bojan will be helpful. I would bet you will see like lineups with Bojan and Cade. Cade's efficiency will probably spike a little bit at least. But man, they need to do something is where I'm at. You have to make a change. You have to make a move. You have to go get somebody that lets you know what Cade Cunningham is. Again, coming into the season, I've said this ad nauseum at this point. The biggest thing the Detroit Pistons have to find out is Cade Cunningham a number 1 option? Is he a number 2 guy? Is he somebody that, like, you don't want to pay? Like, what? We don't know yet, basically. Through 20 games of this season, I think we know he's not somebody that you don't want to pay. Like, it's definitely not that. But I don't know if he's a number 1 option yet. I don't know if he's a number 2 option yet. I know he can't be a number 1 option on a team that has no number 2 option, number 3 option, or number 4 option, which is what he has right now in Detroit. But I don't know if he can be a number 1 or a number 2 with like a real team. This is why you need to go get somebody that actually answers these questions for you. You have to make a real substantial like shakeup move.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's because you mentioned off top. James released that piece like last week that the front office has no interest in doing that right now. Um, so I don't know what that looks like. I don't know who does that for them. I am not really in love with Zach LaVine on this team. I know I've seen a lot of people mention that, and I just don't really like it. But at the same point, I think like there are things that he could do that would be useful for this team for sure. I just think it comes down to what it actually means. But um,
It depends on the price point for me on
yeah.
Zach. Like I wouldn't give up Jaden Ivey for him, like
Oh,
for
hell no.
sure.
I think that's my main thing. The whole Jaden Ivey thing this year has been weird. I don't really feel like speculating on it. I don't get why he's the only it seems like he's like the only player held accountable for not playing good defense. That seemed
Yeah,
like it was he is not a good defender. He hasn't been a good defender. I'll be point blank about that. He wasn't good last year. Um, I think he's still got room to grow with that for sure. But like at the same point, I just don't understand how you watch him with the ball on offense and decide that that's a guy that can't be playing on the court. Like, because there are a lot of guys on this team who are not playing good defense. Like the entire, they're what, like 29th in defense right now, 24th. Okay, but still, like it's not a good defensive team right now. They have the bones to be better defensively, but again, I think because I agree with you. Like Jaden has looked really good since starting, but I think I've been so hung up with it. Like he looked, um, like just so not himself early on in the year. He looked like somebody who was not confident in attacking the rim or doing anything. He looked again, part of it's the spacing, but it's not really that much different spacing from last year. Um, so it just like I don't know, that whole thing has been really odd to me. I hope that was just a blip on the radar, because he and K just make so much sense together to me, as we have seen in the last couple of games where they've gotten to
yeah,
actually play together in the starting lineup. So I don't know, man. This team is it is frustrating. I also mentioned down below that's the name I brought up for the Pistons. I would love for Buddy Hield to be on the Pistons. I wanted them to trade for Buddy Hield last
yeah,
year. I think that it would make sense this year. Getting that kind of player, even like a Terry Rozier, I think makes a lot of sense. Like somebody who can movement shoot. Like there are not movement shooters on this team. And I
yeah.
think you can run. Steve Jones had a really good thread on this the other day. They try and run stuff, but like I think that's one of the things that gets so, and I don't mean to make it sound like I'm smarter than other people, but I think that gets lost. Like it's not that teams aren't trying to run shit. It's that other teams don't give a shit because of what your personnel is. So it looks like you're not
Right.
running anything. And then it bogs down and then it doesn't go right. And they don't always play with pace. They don't always do things correctly. But I think the issue is like there are not players on the team who make them care. That's why the shooting matters. I think things would look so much different if they had that. I hope they figure it out because it's a mess.
I think the Healed idea is a really good one. I think Gary Trent Jr. would be interesting for sure as well. Uh, I think it has to be somebody that has like real gravity as like a offensive player,
Yeah.
kind of. Like that's why like Buddy does have that at the very least. Like he is somebody that can move and can shoot. Like I don't know what the offer would be necessarily for Buddy. Like that seems tricky. Like I don't think they would have interest in Wiseman realistically, but like it's hard to find the team. It's hard to find the guys, I guess, for
Yeah.
Buddy.
I mean,
Um,
would you trade? I don't know if Indiana, I think he fits the profile of a player Indiana would like, but would you trade Isaiah Livers in like a couple seconds for Buddy Hield?
yeah, I probably would. Yeah.
Yeah, I would do that too.
I like Livers, like he's fine. But I think that Buddy is more likely the answers that you would get from having Buddy on this roster this season, I think are probably more valuable than like Isaiah Livers as a good solid bench guy moving forward for Detroit. Um, yeah, like opinionated MJ asks, Pistons over under 22 wins to close the season under. Like I think you would have to say that right now.
Yeah, I think based on how everything's going, I would say the under. And also, I do want to say too, just because Buddy Hield's on an expiring contract, so that's why I do think it like makes it interesting. But I also think like that kind of that seems like right value for the Pacers taking that. Like, I think you get a young player who could be a rotation piece potentially in some draft capital. I don't think you're getting a first back for an expiring contract on him, but
yeah, and Whoosh brings up, still don't really think any of these guys move the needle. To me, it's not really about moving the needle anymore. Unless you can go get unless you're trying to go get a Zach LaVine, right? If you're trying to go get like a real tried and true difference maker star in like a Blake Griffin style Pistons trade that happened under the previous regime. To me, it's about finding answers. Like, I am just about trying to answer the questions that I have about my prospects moving forward, or I'm trying to make like a real substantial move. Like, I'm not as out on the LaVine idea as some people seem to be. I've seen like a lot of criticism about that from like the Detroit fan base. And I'm not saying that that's wrong necessarily. I just think that you really desperately need to find answers regarding Cade. And like Zach LaVine is a real dude who would help you. Like they immediately become a drastically better team with Zach LaVine. Now the question is, like, they have, he's $40 million on 3.5 years left, like $40 to $45 million each year. The question is, like, how are they going to use that money better in the offseason for me? I don't know. Like, do you think the Pistons will use that money more valuably than going out and getting Zach LaVine?
Probably not. No.
I think it's probably unlikely. Like, I don't think OG Anunoby is gonna like be pumped about going there. I don't think that a lot of the free agents are there. Like, again, to me, the only way I do LaVine is like if it's a reasonable deal. Like, I'd probably be willing to give up Marcus Sasser, and I'd do like a first round pick, maybe like but it's hard because like they're so limited in terms of the picks. So, man, it's hard to find. It's hard to like even come up with a deal because I don't want to get rid of Ivy. If I was like another team right now and I was looking at this team as like, someone said in the comments above, like, are they number one in the panic trade power rankings right now? I want to find that to put it up on the screen. So someone asked, are they number one in the panic trade power rankings right now? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Unequivocally.
Unequivocally. Yes. Oh, jinx. You owe me soda. But yeah, no, definitely yes.
Like there's no question that they are number one in those rankings, because like Troy Weaver, if they lose 60 to 65 games again, how do you bring that guy back? Like, I know what James Edwards has said publicly in terms of his reporting, that like these guys aren't on the aren't on the chopping block. They aren't on the hot seat, whatever terminology you want to use. I don't know how you bring him back based off of the fact that he's failed to put a team around Cade Cunningham that allows you to answer any questions about Cade Cunningham. So, and if they don't do anything, they're going to lose that many games. So you have to do something here, I think. Whatever it is, maybe it's just Buddy Hield. Maybe it's you go and get somebody like that can help you answer these questions. Maybe with Buddy and Boyan, and then you put Asar and Duran around them. That's actually like kind of a fun lineup. Cade Cunningham, Buddy Hield, Asar Thompson, Boyan Bogdanovic, and Jalen Duran. And then you bring in Ivy for 25 minutes a night. That's like a somewhat sensible lineup that allows you to answer the questions you need, and you're doing so while not giving up a crazy amount of assets moving forward, right? Like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it.
It's not like the sexiest move in the world, but if you want to go nuts and like do something crazy, then sure, why not? Like, then yes, like that's, if they decide they're willing to do that, then yes, they are number one in the, power rankings of disasters right now. Okay. Mark, I'm done with the Pistons now. We don't have anything else, right? You don't need to talk about anything else?
No, I think that's all I got, man.
I think that's all I got too. Tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on with you.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at MG_Schindler. I just did a bigger thing breaking down Orlando's defense and kind of how we've been able to see this coming for a while and why it's hitting this year. Which that was a very fun piece to go do, because it's been, I don't know, I've loved watching the Magic this season. That's been one of my favorite things. So I think you could kind of see the pieces coming together the last couple of years, and it's really hit this year, which has been very fun. Jalen Suggs is giving his best Marcus Smart impression, which I have absolutely loved. So I'm having a great time, man.
I'm also having a great time with the Orlando Magic. We talked about them a lot on the Sunday show with Bryce. Speaking of the Sunday show with Bryce, that'll be back on Sunday. I'm sure that we will talk more about NBA teams, maybe some NBA draft prospects. That'll be the next podcast for sure. I'll be back throughout the week then. And then, I'll have a top 100 board for sure coming next week, where I rank the top 100 draft prospects. Is you've listened to the show and everything, I'm sure you've kind of picked up where I'm at on some players and what excites me about some guys. So I'm pumped to really dive into that world. But that's all I've got. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, have a breakdown on Cam Thomas up there. Have a breakdown on who else? Jalen Suggs up there. Go watch those. Let me know who you want to see next. I mentioned that I kind of want to do Tyrese Halliburton next, because Halliburton's just been so fun this year, and talk about why his unselfishness and ability to drive transition play is so infectious and enjoyable. I might do that this weekend for Monday, but that's all I've got. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.